Hi everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make the raw recipe that we use here at our home. Um, this is the same balanced recipe that we use to feed to all of our Savannahs, our queens, our studs, and our kittens. Um, the goal is to create a complete, consistent, balanced diet so we don't have to rely on any of the all-in-one supplements. Many raw recipes that you'll find meet all of the macronutrients, and then they recommend that you use something like Vet for every feeding to get all of the micronutrients and all the things that are missed in that base raw recipe. So this recipe that I'm going to show you is something that they could eat without any other kinds of foods, kibble, wet food, or any other supplements other than something like ProViable or something like that, because we don't put that in here. It doesn't freeze well. Anyway, let's walk through the ingredients. So we use salmon oil in this big jug. It's easier to dose. You can also use krill oil. You can get them in little capsules. For me, it's a little annoying and it's not quite as accurate because you have to poke them with a hole and squeeze it out. So we use this salmon oil. It's a pump jar, or you can just shoot it out of here. Now we're going to add this later when we mix all of it together with our eggs. So right now we're going to get all of our supplements out, and then all together we're going to create the slurry first. Now this recipe uses chicken as the base meat, so we use chicken thighs, bone in. We don't remove any of the bone. We leave the skin on there because we want that fat content. We use chicken hearts. That's our main source of taurine and I believe vitamin A. Iron. We use chicken liver. That's vitamin A and copper. And then chicken gizzards is just muscle meat, so that adds more protein and then more of a texture, so they have a chew. The egg yolks give us more fat and choline. We don't use the egg whites. They're okay in small amounts, but they have something called avidin, and it can help, or it can reduce biotin uptake, which long-term effects can be negative. The salmon oil is our omega-3s. Now taurine, this is heart health and reproduction. We use significantly more than what any recipe is out there. Mainly because taurine's water soluble, but it also degrades and is not usable from grinding, processing, freezing. So especially with kibble, wet food, you really don't know what the levels are, even though they start off with the standard amounts, minimum amounts. The good thing about taurine is if you do put too much in there, it's not going to affect any kind of long-term effects or anything like that. But not having enough can have negative effects. So taurine. We use a lot. 90,000. So these are 2,000 pieces. Okay, so if for some reason you're unable to source the chicken hearts, sometimes they're out, that's fine. You can just add 10,000 more milligrams, and then replace the meat with either gizzards or lean, any of them, chicken thigh, chicken breast, or gizzards. And then adding the extra 10,000 is up to you if you want to. You don't really have to. Now we do add additional bone meal. This helps to balance the calcium and phosphorus levels. Now with having too much calcium, you'll kind of notice if your cat's feces start getting a little too hard or too white colored, then you have too much calcium, and just reduce the amount. Every cat's going to be a little bit different, but this recipe is kind of right in the middle, so it's good. So bone meal, we have 2.5 tablespoons. We use psyllium husk fiber powder. Now this is your fiber, so you can add more or less based on, once again, the your cat's feces. If it's way too hard or too soft, if it's too soft, you can adjust the amounts. So this one, we're going to use 1.5 tablespoons. With all of these things, make sure that you get the unflavored. You don't want any kind of that additional ingredients either. Now the vitamin E, we're going to use 4,400 IU. So this comes in 400 IU, so we're going to use 11 capsules. Okay, so you wanted the powder version. We have a soft gel here. So what we're gonna do with this is, it's a little annoying, but we're gonna have to poke these with a needle and add them later. But if you want the powder version, you can just pull apart in the capsules and dump it in. Now the kelp powder, we use this for our iodine. We need 2.5 teaspoons. This allows us to have a very stable iodine level that's repeatable. Now many recipes tell you to use iodized salt. The bad thing about iodized salt is the amount of iodine is inconsistent, and then it's way too much sodium. Over the long term, it can affect kidneys, dehydration, all kinds of things. So we don't need that much sodium. So we break it up. We use this kelp powder instead. To get our iodine source. Zinc is for skin health and immunity. These are 50 milligrams. So we're going to use 6 of them. these, we actually have to grind, so it's a little annoying. Just do a couple at a time. Makes it faster and easier. You do want to make sure you get a good powder. Now you can use one of those little blenders, but you're going to lose a lot of it. It's going to create a lot of dust. You're going to lose a lot of the amount in there. Doing it this way helps to make sure that your levels actually stay accurate. Alright, now I specifically use this brand for our B complex. Your B complex helps stabilize energy and metabolism. We're going to use 3 tablets. Now, this is what we used to use, but the problem with this is it is designed for humans and it has a fast absorption, fast uptake, and it's not ideal for cats. It's a lot easier because it is in capsules. So you just have to pull it apart. You see that? And dump it out. But the kind we're using is a slow release. More ideal for cats. Now we also add manganese and D3. I'm currently out of those. They are micronutrients. And we add them just to level out. Doesn't necessarily have to be in the recipe. Here's our nice powder. Try to scrape off your, clean up your mortar and pestle. Get all of that in there that you can. And the last thing we're going to use is a 1/4 teaspoon of Celtic sea salt. Celtic sea salt is going to help balance our sodium levels and then add rare earth minerals and different things that are good. We don't use very much. We only use a 1/4 teaspoon. That's essentially a pinch, right? My 1/4's gone, but we have a 1/2 here. So we're just gonna tap out about there. Throw that in there. We're going to put it all into this bigger one. So we have well water here, and then we filter from our refrigerator as well. Definitely use filtered water, not city tap water. I recommend be careful where you source if you're using bottled water, because it's a lot of microplastics and stuff in there. But this is about 6 cups of water right here. So we're gonna pour the whole thing in here. Now with this whole slurry, you can use up to 16 cups of water. Just depends on the consistency that you want. I usually use around 12. Savannahs are known for playing with water. They love it, right? And I think that might lead to a lot of people, or the cat's spilling their water all the time. The cat may not have the source of water that we think. Can lead to dehydration, different things like that. And cats in general usually get their water from prey. So we're making sure they get their hydration from the raw food. It's the same with canned wet food. They get a ton of hydration from that. We're going to add our vitamin E now. Remember, we needed 11 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I like to use these little thumb taps. Push it in here. Give it a little turn down. That tears the hole open a little bit more. Squeeze it a couple times, try to get as much out as you can. If you use the krill oil, you have to do this to about 45 capsules. It's time consuming. It gets into your fingers. If you try using gloves, it gets all slippery and almost impossible. Now this recipe is scalable as well. So if you only want to start off with a base batch of 5 pounds of thigh meat, instead of the 25 pounds that we use. So this is a large batch, and it ends up being about 40 pounds of food afterwards. There are places, companies that make raw food for animals. They essentially do all of this as well, but that can be upwards of $10 a pound. I let all of this sit in water while I'm doing all the other steps, and that helps to dissolve all of the powders. So that when we do add it to our meat, we have very consistent distribution throughout the whole batch. Now this one we can set to the side. And we're going to put a cover on. All right, I'm back. Now onto the eggs. So we have our own chickens, so we have this very organic eggs, right? So recommend organic eggs. Now the recipe calls for large eggs, 32 large egg yolks, no whites. I use about 36 because mine range from being large to being small. So we use around 36. This becomes tedious. Now you can save your shells, which I have tons of shells saved. I've baked them, made them into powder. And you can use that as your calcium content, additional, instead of the bone meal if you want to. But it's hard to get it really, really powdery. If you don't want to waste all of this egg yolk or all of these whites, you can look into making cloud bread. A lot of times I will take the extra and go ahead and cook it and then give it back to the chickens. So we're not wasting it all. Now feel free to fast forward through all of that. I'll tell you afterwards, right? Okay. So here's our whites. Don't need that. Like I said, you can make cloud bread out of that, or cook it up and eat it yourself. Here's our yolks. You can use a blender if you want. You just don't want to go too hard on it because you don't want to fluff it. Let's get our salmon oil in there. We're going to use 4 tablespoons of that. I'm pretty sure my recipe tells you you can use a certain amount of pumps as well. This is huge for your omegas. Now this specific type of salmon oil, you do need to refrigerate it after you open it. This is a new bottle. So we'll put it in the refrigerator. There's barely any smell to this too. So the first salmon oil that I used to use, my cats didn't like the smell. So that's where I switched to the krill oil, and they liked that a lot better. So there's our salmon oil in there. Now, we take our supplements, mix it up. Now, all that residue, we want that. So this is about 1.5 cups of water. Keep track, because if you get more than 16 cups of water in this, it's going to end up being pretty watery in the final batch. That's great for young kittens, but picky older cats may not. Be too happy about it. So just keep that in mind. Alright, so that's pretty clean now. We're going to put this in the refrigerator. Try to keep it cold. Keep everything cold. All right, here's the beginning. We're going to start processing the meat, right? So I use the Lem Big Bite number 32. It runs right around $1,000, I believe. So this is a big one. It's big. It's good for processing full bones, all kinds of different things. Now, if you're just doing this for 1 Savannah, 2 Savannah, then you don't need this big of a unit. But there might be a little more prep work when it comes to making sure the chicken can fit and things like that. So we have our chicken thighs, chicken breast, gizzards, liver, and our hearts. Now if you see, we have this big opening one right now. This one is great because we throw our lean chicken breasts in there, and it's the same as dicing them, and that adds extra texture to the meat, so it's a little more enriching. Otherwise, you'll want to cut up the chicken breasts on your own, and that can be very, very time consuming. No matter what, whatever urges you have, never rinse chicken. If there is bacteria, all you're going to end up doing is spreading it around. So here we go. That was around 6.5 pounds of lean chicken breast, done very quickly. So now we're going to change out this end piece. Now when you're rinsing this stuff, and you do want to do it very quickly because the chicken will dry and stick to it all and make it very annoying. Don't put chicken down your sink. I use this little strainer and I spray the chicken off into it. All right, now we're gonna place this little one on here. This is what we need for the bones. So grinding and eating raw chicken bones is completely healthy and good. Cooked chicken bones will splinter, potentially get lodged in the esophagus and the intestines, and can cause a lot of issues. Never cook chicken bones, or any bones at that matter, and give them to animals. Okay, so here's what I do. Open up my gizzards. We're gonna dump them on the top here. Same with my hearts. Now we have 2 packages of gizzards, 2 packages of hearts. One package of liver. I put the liver in the center, up here. And as I'm feeding the chicken thighs through, I'll grab a couple hearts after every one, a couple gizzards, a couple pieces of liver. The liver you want to have stretch out for all of the packs of chicken. So once you get to 2.5 fed through, all of your gizzards should be gone and all of your hearts should be gone, and then you add the additional packages up there, and only half of your liver should be gone. One good thing about the big bite is these big pieces with the bone can fit directly in the hole. All right, here we go. right, I think that's about good. Let's see if we can turn this. Oh. So they come with a tool, I think, that helps you do that. It gets really tight. So good luck with that. But like I said, we like to clean right away before we do anything else, because it saves you a lot of time in the long run. Man, it's usually tight, but not like this. There we go, jeez. Let's go ahead and take that out. Pull this out a little bit until you can turn it. And then you turn it to the side. And that puts the gear back there. And then the front comes off. Now, this stuff would be perfectly fine to go in there, but I feed my kittens too. So these bone shards, although they're okay for bigger cats, they're gonna be a little too big for kittens. This is the main thing you want to clean out. You can use a little pipe cleaner, but man, if you don't do this right away, it becomes a pain to clean. All right, now this is your blade that does the cutting. You may have to replace this over time, but one good way to make sure you don't have to and it stays sharp is as you're grinding, if your grinder is not powerful enough, it will start to heat up here. And that's bad because, for one, you'll lose your sharpness of your blade. And two, it can get so hot that it'll start flash cooking the chicken right here. And it can make the bone brittle and do exactly what you don't want it to do. So a way, if you are getting that extra heat, you can put ice cubes through here as you're going, and that will help keep it cooler. And as long as you don't do a ton, like a whole bag, you're not going to mess up the water content too much. And you can always gauge it. If at the end when you add more water, like my recipe tells you to, just don't add as much, because then it'll become soupy. Okay, another thing, when you're doing this, don't use hot water to rinse your chicken. It'll cook it to the stainless steel. Use cold water. All right, here's our chicken. There's a lot in here. So the numbers, we use about 25 pounds of thighs, all the bones, all of the skin. The skin is where a lot of your fat content's coming from. Now, if you notice over time that your cat is getting a little too much weight in the midsection, you can start taking one skin at a time out of your diet or out of your mix, and that'll reduce the fat content. Now, if you're feeding them wet food or kibble at the same time, just keep in mind that indoor kibble has less calories and everything than outdoor kibble. So if they are gaining weight and you're feeding them that high energy outdoor kibble, indoor outdoor, then maybe think about switching to an indoor kibble, which has less calories in it. Now this is a pain. we want to do a little pre-mix. Because down here at the bottom, that's where all of our lean chicken breast is, all of our chunky meat. We want to try to pull that up. Now eventually, I'm gonna get some kind of a big mixer for this that can handle it, enough torque. All right, we got a bunch up there. Now it's time to add the slurry. All right. Here's our slurry from earlier. It's been in the refrigerator, just chilling. We want to mix it up. And we're going to pour about half of it in. Just like that. Now we're going to start making our brew. See how that just mixes and absorbs really well in there, in that top layer. So now what I gotta do is tip it a little bit and start pulling up some of the bottom layer. Try to get that mixed stuff down to the bottom. That's good enough. This just helps get a little bit better disbursement right off the bat. Now, if you remember, we used 6 cups of water, and then we added another cup and a half. We'll just say 8. We've got another 6 cups right here. So that puts us right around 14 cups. We're gonna go ahead and dip this in. And then we have a lot of residue in here. We want that residue. So we're gonna splash some water in. It's pretty good. Let's get a little bit more. Yes, we are diluting this top surface a little bit, but it's okay. All right. This is the hard part, especially with tools that aren't long enough. One of these days, maybe I'll remember to get a bigger stir and ladle. See how soupy that is? Super soupy. It's okay. It'll absorb in. As you're mixing, you'll see bright red spots come out. Those are areas that you just kind of want to break apart. We're going to work this top layer for a little while. If you're doing a smaller batch, I don't know, this might work in a stand mixer. You could always split the slurry and the meat into smaller batches and, you know, like maybe 4 batches, and then put it in a stand mixer, 1/4 of each, and let it mix for a while, and then eventually add it all back together and do another mix. All right, we got a pretty good mix right here. So this is what I do. Tip it up towards me. Try not to spill it on my lap. And I start pulling up from the bottom. Once I get the section in front of me done, pulled up, I try to mix that up a little bit right here on the surface. Oopsie, found a big chunk of that chicken breast. This is what we're trying to get rid of. But then I rotate it. And yes, if I had a mixer, this would be so much easier. Now you want everything to be pretty fast, because the longer you sit here and work it, the warmer it gets and the higher the chance of bacteria starting to form, right? Now this is all human grade meat, so technically speaking, you could let your cat eat it right away. You don't have to freeze it, but we like to just have a little more precaution, and we always freeze it for 24 hours prior to feeding. Yes, I'll let some of my cats maybe eat some of the chicken off of the ladle and the stirring stick. This mixing is very important though. That's why I'm showing it, because the way that we add our ingredients at the beginning, if you don't get a good mix, then you're not going to evenly distribute all of those nutrients. One serving may have too much of something, another serving not have enough. It wouldn't be enough to overdose or hurt your cat in any way, but the body can only process so much at a time, nutrient wise, so you end up just wasting it. With this raw batch, you do not want to add additional supplements to their diet. You do not want to add new vet or any kind of all-in-one supplement. I am not a vet. I am not a scientist. I spent a lot of time figuring out minimal standards for animals, USDA stuff. Came up with this recipe. And since we started using it, we were actually having some trouble with fertility with some of our cats. And we changed a lot of things, so I can't say it's 100% this new recipe, but I will say all of my cats that I was having issues with are all pregnant right now. So that's very exciting. Nutrient deficiency from eating. They were eating kibble and wet food and raw, and all we did was change the raw, and boom. All right, so here's what we're done right now. I'm gonna let this actually sit for about 10 minutes. It will marinate a little bit longer, allow all the water to kind of dissipate and absorb, and then I'm gonna come in and give it one last stir before we bag it up. We could have added more water, And I might still, but I'm happy with this consistency this time. So we're not gonna add this. This looks like about 2 cups. If you're doing just your cats, obviously you can use maybe some glass Tupperware. We use plastic bags. It doesn't stay in the bags for very long because this is only a week's worth of food. So we're not getting too much microplastic transfer with overtime freezer burn or anything like that. Now this batch, let's run through the numbers. There's 25 pounds of chicken thigh. There's 6.5 pounds of chicken breast. There's about 2 pounds of hearts. Almost 3 pounds of hearts. About 1.5 pounds of liver and around 2 pounds of gizzards. So we'll say that's right around 35 to 40 pounds of just raw meat. And then there's 12 cups, 80, I don't know, another 5.5 to 10 pounds, 5, 6, 7, around 7 pounds. Anyway, this is about a 40-pound batch. So 40 pounds, if you're just doing one cat, we'll say they eat around 8 ounces a day. This is about 80 days worth of food for you. Older cats aren't going to eat up to 8 ounces. The younger cats could eat up to 12. But yeah, this is around $100 worth of food is what it costs, not including the supplements. So the supplements, yes, they're going to be a little expensive buying them all at once. But once you get them, those supplements will last you a long time, several batches. So we'll just ignore those. 100 pounds of meat and everything, 80 days. So you're looking at 80 cents a day. Not too bad. All right, so I decided to go ahead and show the whole process. Now we use these gallon bags. We use this much because we have a lot of cats, right? So this scoop does about 3 ounces per scoop. I'm not very specific with it. And I do 6 scoops. So we're looking at 18 ounces or so, about 1 pound per bag. We go through 2 of these bags a day, 2 pounds of food. And you don't need to do that much. So once you thaw these out from the freezer, you can keep them in the refrigerator for 2 days. When you feed your cat and you put it on a plate, it can stay out for about an hour. If they don't eat it within that hour, you need to throw it away. That's when you start getting bacterial growth and everything. Now, if you put it out and they show no interest in it at all, you can put it back in the refrigerator at that point to save it. But if it's out for more than 10 minutes or so, I wouldn't put it back in the fridge. So you could put a lot more than 6 scoops in here. You see the consistency? This is the consistency I like. It's almost like hamburger meat. With kittens, you can put more water in it. And you can always add water afterwards too. So when you plate it, you can mix in more water. I really harp on the whole water thing because dehydration can cause a lot of different things. And cats hide their ailments very well, especially Savannahs. Dehydration can lead to issues like crystals in the urine. Cats aren't inherent to wanting to drink out of a stale bowl. The fountains are really good for them, but my Savannahs tear up those fountains. We tried them. So we always try to make sure they get their water from the meat itself. So here's what I do. We store it flat. So I flatten it out. Try to get as much of the air out of it as possible. Now, if you are doing this large of a batch and you want it to last that full 80 days, it might be beneficial to invest in one of those sealing machines instead of using Ziplocs. Something that will pull all the air out of it, because you don't want to get freezer burn on. So now we have this very flat bag. The good thing about this is it stacks relatively well in the freezer, and when you thaw it out, it thaws out a lot faster. If you store it bulged in the bottom, it'll be super thick and it'll take forever to thaw out. And you want to thaw, and we're actually going to show you, but you want to thaw with cold water, nice and slow. Never leave it out at room temperature to cool it or to thaw it. If you want to thaw it fast, you can do it in cold water, or you can put it in the refrigerator and let it thaw out over a matter of days. So I continually mix as I'm doing this, just to try to make sure any spots that I might have missed, I get.
That bottle of 100 Excedrin lasted me 168 days.
So I mentioned earlier that you can use glass containers and things like that, and that's fine, but I would not put in more than an inch in depth in the chicken. So however you store it, if you put it in quarts or containers, sealed containers, just make sure that the amount in that container you can use in 2 days. So if you're talking about one cat, we'll say a 6-month-old to a 12-month-old, they could potentially eat 8 ounces a day. So they could eat this, all of this, in 2 days, right? And this amount of food right here, if you were to get it from one of the companies that makes this and sends it out to you frozen, this is $10. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, we'll move on to another little section. All right, so here's all of the chicken bagged up, and this is around $400 worth of chicken if you were to buy it from somewhere like Darwin's. All right, so we're gonna finish up here, and just a little disclaimer, once again, I'm not a veterinarian. I have been a breeder for the last 4 years now, 5 years almost. And this recipe has been just merging for the last year, I guess. I kind of honed it in about 6 months ago. And always check with your veterinarian, but to be honest, with raw diets, veterinarians usually kind of look down on raw diets because there's a lot of risk of bacterial growth and sicknesses from that. But if you follow some pretty strict protocols of, no more than an hour out, and never reuse the same plates, always make sure that it's a clean environment, it's pretty safe. I've never had a cat get sick from a raw diet. Veterinarians will say that, there's millions and millions of dollars spent in perfecting kibble and wet food and everything, and it's perfectly safe, and your cat will be healthy and live forever. Well, the way that I look at it is, can we live forever off of protein bars that have everything that we want or everything that we need? Or is it better to have ribeye, right? Natural, healthy, unprocessed food. Obviously, healthy, unprocessed food is better. So that's why we're pretty big on raw. You will notice too with their bowels, there's not much smell when it comes to eating raw diets compared to kibble, which is mainly filler and grain, which Savannahs do not need. Lower generations can tolerate it a lot more than our higher generations. So if you're looking at an F3 or above, that's what this recipe is specifically designed for, but it's perfectly fine for F4 and below as well. If you have any questions or anything, you can reach out, leave a comment, whatever you need. I love these animals, and I'm here to help you, and I'm here to help them so that they're energetic and happy and they live a full, healthy life, being a part of you guys' family. So we'll talk to you later.